And we're
There we go.
live. Welcome back, Shifties. This is Shift the Journey. I'm your host, Tito Amogus. Today we have a guest. His name is Robert or Rob Schulteis.
Nailed it.
Yes, that's how you say it. Schulteis.
Yeah.
Yes. So I told him I didn't want to mess up his name because people mess up my name all the time. Which name? Take your pick. Uh, you'd think that like Tito is easy, but I've had people I think like go to Starbucks or whatever and like they write it down and somebody's reading
Yeah.
Taito. And I'm like, you really don't know how to pronounce that? That's crazy. But now it's connected to my, I have the Starbucks app. So
Uh-huh.
then when I go and buy something, it's got my first name on it. And they're like, Prometheus? I'm like, hey, good job.
Nailed that one.
Yeah. All right. Anyway, so this show, if this is your first time watching out there, this show is where I get to interview somebody each time and they get to talk about their career journey. Maybe you're out there going, you know what? I want to like a change in scenery, or maybe you've been thinking about some kind of career shift for a long time, career shift, career change, career path change, whatever the case may be. And with all the I see you people out there, the my fellow veterans and you know the civil service people who are getting laid off and stuff, and it's like, oh, what do I do? How can I approach this? Well, I'm not going to give you a blueprint. It's not possible to give you a blueprint. The climate is different, as well as everybody's journey is different, but I can tell you that it can be done. I am 20-year veteran of the United States Air Force. I made the change in the summer of 2015, and it wasn't always easy, but let me tell you, sure was rewarding to find my new path and get on with that. So, enough about me. Our guest here, Rob, is a graduate of Nashville Software School. You guys hear me talk about it all the time. It's legit. NSS, and he's going to talk about like where he came from, what he was doing, what he's doing now, and how he got there. So let's get to you, Rob. So where are you from originally?
So originally, I'm from a small town just outside of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, called Slinger. I grew up there. It's a little farming community, and not many people there, but it's just a stone's throw away from Milwaukee. Um, and then I ended up I worked for my dad for a long time. He had a sanitation business there, and then I went to school for audio engineering and ended up in Nashville. I ended up in
Yeah.
Nashville for uh, 11 or 12 years, a long enough time to call it a second home for sure.
Yeah. So like when you were growing up, did you think, yeah, you know what, I want to be an audio engineer? What was the thing that sparked that interest?
No, it's kind of like my data journey is a pretty long, winding road. In I would say in 8th grade or early high school, I got really into like HTML code, and like I remember getting a Java book, um, and really liking it, but I liked guitar more. Like
Oh,
I got pretty good at the
yeah.
Java thing, but I got to a certain point and I started spending more time playing guitar, and that kind of led me down this audio engineering path, and
Mhm.
kind of led me to Nashville, and I worked in the music industry for a long time, and I've bounced around. Like I said, it's kind of a long journey. I'm kind of excited to talk more about it.
Yeah. So here's the thing: like when I lived in Nashville, I oh man, I met so many people who were like musicians or vocalists who were like doing other things. They're like, oh, I'm a sound engineer, but then I'm also like I play guitar and I play bass or whatever. And then like somebody else was like, oh yeah, I go on the road. I'm a drum tech. But then like when they were at home, they're like killing it on the drums, and it's like wow. So did you have that like that dual type of career?
So yeah, my I worked for a large sound company, Claire Global. Their main office is in Lidditz, Pennsylvania, but they had one of their other offices was in Nashville, and I worked there, and it was a tour prep gig. So I was a shop dude, but I would also, if we had gigs in town, I was the truck driver and would do load-ins and load-outs. And my main gig there though was the amp technician and like the PA guy. So I was
Oh,
I was
okay.
the guy that made everything loud when you'd go see,
Yeah.
the Rolling Stones or whomever. I was the guy who configured all the outputs, make sure it all went to where it was supposed to go, and make sure it was really really loud.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Sweet. So, you said you were there for how many years? Was it 11 years?
I was in Nashville for 11 years. I did
Yeah,
that gig for 5.5, I think.
yeah. And then so what sparked the change to go into data? What made
So
you want to get a corporate job?
yeah, no, I mean the long hours, and the long hours, it was pretty hard on my body.
Yeah.
Some of them shifts, when especially when like the CMA awards are in town. I remember
Oh,
working a
yeah.
shift that was, more than 24 hours,
Oh,
and doing that more than once. Sustaining that for a long time was tough. And my now wife, but my girlfriend at the time was like, "Hey, did you ever think about maybe doing doing something else where you could spend a little more time at home and maybe not come home looking like you just played a NFL football game and got tackled by Ray
yeah.
Lewis all day." Uh,
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I remember having several conversations with younger guys who were like on the road all the time,
yeah,
as musicians or as techs. And I'm like, I don't have the same experience, but having been in the military, I'll tell you, that was tough. It was really tough. It's like one thing if you like are single. I knew a guy who was single and he was working on helicopters with special forces, and so he was gone all the time. So he didn't even have an apartment because he knew he would never be home more than like 2 or 3 weeks at a time. So he had all his stuff in a storage locker, and then he would sleep on his friend's couch when he came. And I was like, that's not sustainable, because when you decide to have a family, your wife is not going to live in a storage locker. Just saying. But anyway, it's funny because it's like, yeah, I didn't live that like musician thing, but well, I am a musician, but I did not live the music industry life.
yeah.
But yes, I understand the being gone all the time.
Yeah, and I started thinking more seriously about it, and I didn't transition like from there. I didn't go straight into data. I went into just a job that was a little easier on my body, not necessarily my ears. I get reminded of that all the time because I can't hear anything
What?
anymore. But yeah, I started testing commercial fire alarm systems for Johnson Controls, like at
I
the
saw that.
the major hospitals around Nashville.
Yeah,
I generally was the one who was making sure all that was compliant and all of that. And I started getting into programming the fire alarm panels, and it
yeah,
started kind of getting back into some of the things I used to like when I was younger. And then my wife actually took the web dev course at NSS,
oh, okay.
and she loved it. And the part-time web dev is like a 12-month. It's really intense. It's a 12-month course, but she loved it. She loved her instructors, and she knew that I had kind of a background a long time ago. And she was like, I really think you should do this. I know you'd really like it. And my history was the web dev side of things. So that's kind of what I was looking for. And I looked on NSS's website, and there wasn't anything kind of coming up. At least it was going to be for a while, but there was
Mhm,
the data course, and my wife was like, "Just
mhm.
take it." She was like, "Just take it. Like you love baseball. Like you're gonna like data. Like,
Oh,
you love baseball."
yeah, statistics. Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
it's just like you like sports, you like all that. Like you're gonna like it, and it's still code. And I was like, "All right, sure. Like I'll just dive into it." And got in there. I actually there wasn't a space for me when I applied, and this is kind of this sort of, you just follow the signs when they appear for you.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
I signed up, and then you have that sort of like, I hadn't taken school in forever. I didn't. I
Yeah.
was good at school, but I didn't particularly like it. Um, and I signed up, and I was like, what did I just do? Why did I just sign myself up for school? Like, and they shot back, and they were like, hey, we don't have a spot open right now, but sometimes things open up, but we'll put you in the next cohort, and that's like 6 months away at the time, and that would give me way too much time to back out.
Yeah.
But then I got an email like a couple days later, because the next cohort was starting very soon. I think I got the email on a Friday, and the cohort was starting that next Tuesday, and they were like, hey, there's a spot opened up, like, you're in if you want it. And I
Wow.
was like, sure, let's just do it. I'm not like, that's too big of a sign. Like, I'll just go for it, and
Yeah.
I'm not going to talk myself out of it. It's too good of an opportunity. It's pretty quick, but let's just do it. And yeah, I got in there, and it was great. Like, I fell right into a rhythm. And the instructors brigade. I adore NSS, and I'm sure we'll get into this later. But like, I
Mhm.
teach there now. Like, it's
Mhm.
I obviously really like the program, because I'm a lead instructor there now. But yeah, it was a ton of work, and
Mhm.
I think one of the main things I impart on our students now is that when you make the decision to join a boot camp, the data, like, for people watching now, the data boot camp at Nashville Software School, the part time is 6 months,
Mhm.
and it's intense. With, like, you get a lot thrown at you, and it's called a boot camp for a reason. But one of the things I like to impart on the students is, if you're taking that jump, if you're making this decision to spend your time to make a career shift, or whatever, you're obviously doing it to change the situation that's going on right now, right? So
Mhm.
um, I try to impart, like, if you're doing that, do it all the way for the
Yeah.
time that there is. Like, for NSS, it's the students is like 6 months. So I'm just like, hey, this is your 6 months. Like, you made the decision, give it everything you got, you know?
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I approached it. I was working, 50 to 60 hours a week at Johnson Controls,
Oof.
and taking the night class at NSS. But my wife was a baker, at a vegan, very popular vegan restaurant that's not there anymore. But I would just go to work with her in the morning, because she had baker's
Mhm.
hours, so she'd be there at like 4, and I would just take that extra bit of time to do all my NSS stuff, like do all the
Mhm.
coursework that we get, do any extra coursework that I could, and just lived in the world for
Yeah.
those 6 months to give myself the best chance that I could.
Yeah.
Um, and it's a
You know
wonderful program.
what's funny is that I've had I've had people ask me questions that are like way out in left field, right? They're like, "Oh, I'm not made for corporate because I have tattoos. What do you think about tattoos in corporate?" And I'm like, when I lived in Nashville, I'm when I lived in Nashville, I saw them all on people's forearms. I worked with a guy who had neck tats.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was just whatever, and I'm sure there's some companies or some hiring managers who are like, I'm not hiring that person. But I mean,
Yeah.
I saw them all, like, legs, feet, hands, arms, neck. Like I
Yeah.
said, I did not work with anybody who had like face tats like Post Malone, but I did work with a guy who had neck tats, and I was like, holy cow.
Yeah.
This guy
Yeah.
didn't have a LinkedIn because he said he didn't want people to judge him based on the neck tats, and he's like, I don't know how I could pull it off unless I wore it, like it was The Rock's iconic picture with his turtleneck,
Yeah.
in the fanny pack. I was like, oh my gosh, that's so
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
that's
and that's funny, and we do get that every so often too, because we get, being in Nashville, we do get a ton of musicians, we get a ton of restaurant workers and things like that who are definitely have more tattoos and whatnot, and that culture has changed a lot. But like you said,
Yeah.
you know, you can find a spot that might be like that, but 9 out of 10 times people aren't going to care.
Yeah.
And if they do, then that is what it is. You gotta roll
Right.
with the punches and move on to the next one.
Just move on.
Uh,
Exactly. Yeah. Nashville is such a, it's like, it's almost like it's already an expectation that whoever you're interacting with, whether like, yeah, I'm going to a restaurant and my server is probably here because of music, and
yeah,
then like,
yeah,
or, you're anywhere
yeah.
doing any, like buying something or whatever. And it's people you meet, they're there for music. So, it's just a different it's just a different culture. Anyway, that took us way off the road there. But so your school was, you said 6 months.
Yeah.
Did you, so like in those data analytics roundtables, people often ask like, oh, what's the job search like? And there's like people that have like real anxiety because
Mhm.
it's like, oh, such an unknown. What was the job search like for you?
So for me, because I worked at such a large, and I do want to circle back on something about that we were just talking about, so I'm going to try not to
Okay.
forget it. But m- because I worked at such a global company, I worked at Johnson Controls at the time. I wanted to use that to my advantage. It was such a big company, so I looked at home base first,
Yeah.
and my instructor at the time, she really pushes, and like I do too. Once you feel comfortable in SQL, we run through three languages. I guess we run through Excel, SQL, and Python. And she encouraged us, once we felt comfortable in SQL, is like, hey, start putting yourself out there. It can be a long journey. So like start early. It's going to take a while for things to gain traction. So I took that to heart, and I'm not necessarily um, that type of person where I'll make a leap like that. But I had my wife pushing me, and I had Amanda, the lead instructor. She was like, just go for it. So I did. I found a role at Johnson Controls for a learning data analyst. I didn't really know what that meant. I thought it was like, hey, I thought it was like a kind of like an intern position, the way it was worded. So I was like, oh, that's
Yeah.
perfect. So I applied there, and I was able to figure out who the hiring manager was through the job posting and whatnot. And my wife was just on me and was like, just email the guy, And I'm not that type of person. I'm not that.
You had
I'm
nothing to
normally not
lose.
like that. Yeah, and she was like, just email the guy. Like, what do you have to lose? And I was like, I don't want to bother him. It's just like a
Yeah.
Midwest stuff. But I I listened to her though, and it's a good thing because this will dovetail into something else. But so I did. I emailed the guy. I was like, hey, I've been going through this course. Here's some dashboards I put together and whatnot, and don't hear anything for a little while. And my wife again, she was like, hey, did you ever hear anything from that guy? I'm like, no. She's like, email him again. I was like, okay. So I did, and then I got a response. I did, and then a day or two later, I ended up getting a response. I was like, hey, instead of just sending the dashboards, I was like, well, here's the dashboards again, and these are some of the functions I use to create the calculations and things like that. And I took it more seriously, and to not make the story too long, I did end up getting that job. And um my manager told me later on, he admitted to me that he saw my initial request come through and ignored it because he didn't
Yeah.
understand why a fire alarm technician would transfer into a data analyst role. It didn't make sense to him. And he was like,
Yeah.
and then you kept emailing me. I was like, this guy must be
Hey,
serious.
persistence, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was like, this guy must be serious.
Yep.
And then that's how it worked. And I ended up accepting an offer right before graduation.
Nice.
Which was super cool. And
Nice.
that's why we push that so hard, is like we do get that. We have it almost every cohort, we get at least one person that gets hired or signs an offer before graduation. And our last cohort, we had a bunch. It's really nice, and it's always super exciting when that happens. To watch. A lot of times these people, they're not coming, like, these students aren't coming in with experience, but
Yeah.
they're dedicating themselves super hard, and watching that all transform is so cool.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, that's my job search. Like, I was lucky in that sense where my job search wasn't super lengthy, but there are plenty. Our my current junior instructor had, an incredibly lengthy job search, but you be persistent, you keep going, and you just don't stop. You keep learning, and you keep plugging away, whether you have to send out 2 applications or 250. Like, you just keep
Yeah.
going at it.
Yeah. And another one of the I'm glad you talked about like how you got into your first data job, because another one of the things that people often ask is like, um, how do I take what I've been doing and like, is it relevant and going into another field? And I'm like, absolutely. Everything you've done in the past is relevant to whatever you want to do in the future. You just have to be able to frame it in a way that the hiring manager is gonna understand what kind of value you're gonna bring to the team.
Yeah, absolutely. We tell students the same thing, especially, we had a chef last cohort, and that was one of their questions, like,
Ooh.
how do I relate this to data? I was like, well, you've had to troubleshoot stuff, right? At every job you've had
Oh, yeah.
something not go right, and you've had to fix it, right?
Oh,
That's
yeah.
every job.
Pressure.
That is
Yeah,
every job.
pressure and attention to detail
Yeah, that is
and
every
all
job,
those
and use
things.
it.
Yes.
Yeah, use it to your advantage. I used to, earlier in the podcast, I was saying my dad had a sanitation business. I used to pump portable toilets. I have
Oh,
gotten to a point now where I can weave that into, a data job. It's all troubleshooting, and it's all, you're developing a lot of skills.
yeah.
At any job that you have, whether it's soft skills or tech skills, if you have that background, or maybe you're familiar in the field. Like, sometimes we have students who have healthcare like background, not necessarily data background, but they're familiar with healthcare codes and
Right.
things like that. All of that is incredibly relevant, and we have a really good staff that helps students get jobs, and we tell them, it's like, reach out to career dev. They'll help you. They see it all. Like,
Mhm.
use it to your advantage. Like, find people who, if you have HR friends or whatnot, like, find those people that can help you reframe your past experiences into what you're trying to do. Like, utilize all the resources you have. I'm sure, most people have a friend who is good at those sort of things. If you're not,
Yeah.
find
Yeah.
the person that is, and be like, hey, how can I, dovetail this into a data job?
Yeah. I have a connection, a network connection, who actually does that like in her spare time. She loves to do that. So it's like, you know, some people are like, oh gosh, that's really hard to do. And then there are other people who are like, oh, I love doing that. So send those people my way, is what she said. I'm
Eh,
like, okay, hey. So if you're out there, if you're watching and you're
yeah.
like, hey, I'm trying to transition into
Mhm.
another field, but I don't know how to take what I've done and translate it into a resume that matters, shoot me a message. We'll talk. So how long were you in that position? Your
So
first position?
my first data job, I was in that position for 10 months. I loved that role. I had a amazing manager. I adore that guy. I couldn't have asked for a better manager for my first, like, data role, and it was corporate data job, and I learned just a ton. And One of the things that I think is intimidating, it was intimidating for me, and I know when you get into tech, it gets talked about a lot, as imposter syndrome gets talked about a lot.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things we talk to our students about, and it comes up pretty early. And you know uh, I've been doing this for a while now. I feel very comfortable in my technical skills, but it still comes up. And
Mhm.
what was nice is having, having a manager who was very kind and very like, hey, you're not expected to come in here and just like solve all of our problems right away. It's
Mhm.
and I don't think there's not a lot of roles like that. But that's how you feel,
Yeah.
when you're coming in. You're like, especially, this is all about shifting from a different a different career. It can be really intimidating at first,
Mhm.
but um you just got to trust in all the work that you put behind you, and anything that comes up, you generally have a support system in a new job. And
Yeah.
ask the questions, like, even as if you're not a question asker, try to do it anyways.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
hard,
And, in your, like, first job, you're
Mhm.
not ever going to be expected to do more than learn and then, like,
Yeah,
they put you in a routine so that you do the things and then you become proficient in the things, right?
yeah,
But, like, they don't expect you to know how to, for the most part, don't
yeah,
expect you to know how to use all the tools as,
yeah,
like, entry level. You shouldn't, like, have to know all the tools or know all the languages or, like, be super good at, like, a language or whatever as entry level. Now,
yeah,
like, you learn all those things, then you become proficient in them and all those things, and then you, like, look for another position or promote within, which I haven't seen a lot of, to be honest.
yeah,
Like, mostly, like, people moving, especially in tech. Um, I was at my first job, and one of the guys that I worked with, he was senior to me, and he was moving, and so he's moving to, like, Chattanooga, and so then he's like, "Oh, I gotta find another job," and I'm like, "You've only been here, like, 18 months." He's like, "Ah, it doesn't matter, we're in tech, and, the the changing of positions." Like, at that time, it really didn't matter a lot because there was so much need for people that did what we did and not enough people. Now, a little bit different, but
yeah.
yeah, it was like that. So, what was your next position?
So after Johnson Controls, like I said, I really liked that job. It was a really good gig, really laid back. But me and my wife, we started talking about wanting to have a family, and Nashville had grown too big for
Oh,
both
yeah.
of us. It was causing we lived on the east side,
Oh,
and it was getting really busy. Our street was starting to get they were starting to knock down a bunch of houses and put up tall skinnies, and it was just like creeping closer and closer. And we were talking
oh,
about
yeah.
having a kid. And um like I said, I was raised in the north, and I somehow convinced my wife, who's a native Nashvilleian, to move up to move up to the
Oh, no.
north, on Lake Superior. We live in Marquette, Michigan now, way up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And
You married a Nashville native.
uh,
They're an endangered species, and you took her
yeah,
out of her comfort zone.
I did, and she loves it up here. She does. And so that was like kind of the start of the catalyst of thinking about a different job. Is once we got up here, we did find out that we were expecting a child. But the it was 3 days before we left, she was working at a fintech startup
Okay.
and was let go 3 days
Oh,
before we moved, and we had budgeted
oof.
for two salaries.
Mm.
We budgeted for two salaries, and she lost her job 3 days before we moved. And we had a talk right then. It was like, hey, do we want to still do this? And we had both gone on a pretty big, like, personal, like, life changing, just like, hey, let's clean up all the things that we do, let's get healthy, let's do all this, let's make all these changes. And it all dovetailed from us to, we quit drinking, we got different jobs in tech, over a course of a long time. um, and culminated to us moving. And then this happened a couple days before we're like our U-Haul's about to be there,
Yeah.
and like, hey, do we still want to do this? And we were like, hey, we've bet on ourselves this long, like we'll just go. We'll figure it out when we get there.
Yeah.
So we just went forward with the plan, moved, almost 1,000 miles north, and
Mhm.
pretty quickly we figured out we were expecting a child, and my wage at Johnson Controls wasn't going to support us for very long. And I felt very comfortable I felt very comfortable in my skills, but I didn't feel that comfortable where I was necessarily ready to take a big leap to try to get a bigger
Mhm.
wage, but I had to. It was a force
Yeah.
of like, if we're gonna stay up here, well, I have to. And man, all the stars aligned, in the first job I found and applied for at Syndigo, where I currently work. I got in there and got the job there. I'm a BI developer there, which is it's kind of a term, like you kind of do everything. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, you're a data
Well,
analyst. You kind of do
yeah. The
a little bit of everything.
yeah, the job titles. It's funny because
Yeah.
when I was getting out of the military, I was like, yeah, I want to be a data analyst. And then I'm like, oh, maybe I don't want to be a data analyst. Maybe I want to be a BI developer. Yeah, I want to do that. Man, it's funny because your actual title being BI developer, that's actually rare because it's like all these different things. I was an associate solutions analyst, and then I was a data services analyst. What is that? Well, I was an analyst on a team called data services, and then I was promoted to a business intelligence analyst. It's like, what's that? What are you doing that's different? Nothing. So it's like the naming convention for this field do not exist. They just don't. But back to your new home up there. Yeah, in the fall of 2021. Well, let me go back real quick. So I lived in Nashville for 5 years. So we left here. I retired in July of 2015, and then I had my retirement ceremony on like July 24th, and then the next week, July 31st, we were living with my sister in Rockville, and we lived in the Nashville area. We lived in Rockville, we lived in Creve Hall, Germantown, and then moved out to Pleasant View, like halfway up to Clarksville.
Mhm.
We're out there for 5 years, and middle of the pandemic, we're like, oh, we're going to move closer to my wife's parents who live back here in Mississippi. So this is where we came from. This is where we went back to. And so we had just bought a house in 2021. And then a few months later, we're like, hey, let's go visit our son who lives outside GR, right? Grand Rapids. And so we're like, we're going to drive. So we went up through Nashville, went to a friend's wedding, and visited with my family who was still in Nashville. And then we went up to Grand Rapids for a little bit, and then we drove up to Marquette because my sister was living there. So October 2021 is when we were in Marquette. I wanted to move there. My wife's just like, no, it's too cold. I was like, I want to move here. This is beautiful. This is amazing.
Yeah.
Because I would spend probably like the morning working in my sister's house, and then I'd pack up my stuff and then walk over to Contrast Coffee and go work over there, and then go walk somewhere and eat lunch, and then walk up to there was another coffee shop like up the street from that. It's like a two-story house. I can't remember the name
The
of it.
crib.
Ah, that's right.
Yeah.
It's a two-story house called the Crib. That's
Yeah.
right.
Uh-huh.
And work there in the afternoon, or like in the morning, right after breakfast, like over to Contrast, whatever it was, just going all over the place. I was like, this place is amazing. We walked all over the place, and I'm like, man, I gotta bring my bicycle up here, all the things, right? But that was the one and only time we were up there because my sister moved back to Nashville. But let me tell you, anybody out there who's never heard of Marquette, Michigan, don't worry about it. It doesn't exist, right? You don't want people to move up there.
Exactly. No,
But
yeah.
if you wanna visit like a place that's like uh that's like hometown USA, man. It's
Yeah,
like
it's very
beautiful,
unique. Yeah,
gorgeous, especially in the
it's a
fall.
Yeah, it's a really, really unique town, and being right on Lake Superior is really cool. There's no shortage of hiking trails, biking trails, cross country ski trails. It's a really gorgeous place. October is a really good time to be up here with the leaves. It's pretty impressive up here when the leaves change.
Oh yeah,
Um,
I have
and
several pictures from on top of the mountain there. Is it Mount Marquette?
yeah, yep, yep,
Yes, and, like, taking pictures of the town right on Lake Superior.
yeah. Yeah, no, it's really cool. It really works well with the sort of remote work life. Yeah, it's great. I can't say enough great things about it. We fell in love with it really quickly, and I used to come up here with a buddy who had a camp close by, and um, yeah, I highly recommend Marquette. It is definitely worth the trip. Anybody that's watching, it's a ways. There's not a major airport close by, but it's worth it.
Yeah, and, if you wanna go see a football game, it's only 3 hours to Green Bay, right?
It's only 3 hours to Green Bay. Yep.
Yeah, my sister's family would go down there to Costco, I think it
Uh-huh.
was, like,
Yep.
once a month or whatever it was. I'm like,
Yeah.
3 hours, man, that's a long ways away. And then you're not making that trip in the wintertime, right? Their first winter there, I wanna say it was like 100 inches of snow, something
Uh-huh.
crazy.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm like, that's a lot."
Yeah, no, we get a bunch up here. We got like a foot the other day.
Yeah, so have you ever seen, what is it his name, Surfer Dan?
Oh yeah.
Being in his
Yeah, yeah.
wetsuit and
Uh-huh.
his frozen
The
beard
ice the ice beards. Yeah.
and icicles on his eyelashes.
Oh yeah.
Yes,
Oh yeah. We see his vehicle
that's the
around
craziest thing, man.
quite a bit. There was a surfer out yesterday. And it's below zero up here. Yeah.
See, I you know what, if I could move up there for, like, maybe the dead heat of summer, it would be great. I mean, I had a buddy he was from Battle Creek, but he said he was in the area, like, when he was in high school, and he had, like, a family picnic or something, and he said he got hot, so he went for a dip in Lake Superior, and he's like, "It's the summertime. I figured why not?" And I said, "How cold was it?" He's like, "It's probably 55 degrees. The water was probably 55 degrees." I'm like,
Oh
"You can put yourself into shock
yeah.
and, like, almost die." He's like, "I almost died. I think I almost died."
Yeah, she's pretty cold. She stays pretty cool for a while.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And so if there's one piece of advice, since you're now teaching at
Mhm,
Nashville Software School, I'm sure you give advice.
mhm,
And people ask you all kinds of questions because all the unknowns. But if there's something that somebody out there maybe who doesn't go to NSS, if there's
mhm,
one piece of advice for somebody who's thinking about making some like real
mhm,
life change, because the career change is a life change.
mhm.
um, what piece of advice would you give them?
Yeah, I can probably fill a good bit of time with my advice. So there are any number of ways to start, and it's not necessarily data, but like if we're gonna, I'll frame it in data just because that's where I'm at. But generally, you can find free courses to do whatever the thing that you want to do is in tech. You generally can have some sort of free education, but the main thing that you'll have to like reason with yourself is your time and your dedication. You have to, if you really want it, it has got to be what you live in. Like you just have got to make the time sacrifices to give it absolutely everything you absolutely have, to give yourself the best shot. And it the rewards will be endless. At the end of the day, you're going to learn things that you didn't know before. And if you're deciding to make a shift into something, there's generally a passion behind it, and you got to really not lose sight of that. It's hard. It's it's not easy to learn new things. We have, like I said, most of our students come in brand new, have never been in tech before, and don't know anything about Excel, SQL, or Python. And that is hard. It is incredibly, incredibly difficult to make that sort of shift, but it is 1,000,000% possible. We see it every cohort over and over again. It's just the dedication that you put behind it and the work you put behind it. This is so one of my big things in our cohort, and what I try, the type of environment that I try to cultivate is like a mistakes first mindset. You're not gonna break anything. Don't try not to go into it with hesitation. If you're trying to learn to code, just go in there and make a ton of mistakes and try to fix them. Mistakes is where all the beauty lies and all the learning lies. And you don't have to, this isn't a NSS plug. Like, you don't have to go to NSS to do any of this. Like, if you're interested in data, if you're here and you're interested in data, like there's free courses. There's Alex the Analyst has a straight up full free course. I have a dear friend of mine who, they just were like, hey, they were a baker for a long time too and needed to change. They had moved from Nashville too. And that's this exact same advice for me. And I said to them what I'm saying now. I was like, if you want to do this on your own route, it's going to be incredibly, incredibly hard because you are the only one keeping you accountable. And that's totally doable. That is 1,000,000% doable. You don't have to do this by spending money on something. If you don't have those means, there's things out there for you. That even at NSS, there's things that, like, they're very good about helping people and getting people in here and in any walk of life. But the thing that doesn't change about any of it is how much you dedicate your time to it. And that is across the board. The people that really, 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 really spend the time in it are the ones that get there. And I truly, truly, truly believe, things may come easier for some people or not. It doesn't matter. It's still going to require a ton of work. It's still going to be you making mistakes, and lean on, if you're in a program that does have somebody you can talk to, ask questions. If you have friends that are in that field, ask questions. Network.
Yes,
I can't say it enough. We talk to our students all the time. It's something that our program is very, very good about, is getting you out in front of people who are in there and getting you talking and meeting people. That's how me and you had, how I met you was at one of the roundtables. And, the more pairs of ears you have out there listening for you, the better. Your network is going to be huge. It's something I preach a lot too, is you've got to try to make it as easy for yourself as possible. So putting a bunch of time in and learning, making a ton of mistakes and fixing those mistakes, doing that over and over and over again, repeat, rinse and repeat, and meet people who are in it, and surround yourself with people who are in it and talk to those people, because they're likely going to be the ones that might make that shift a bit easier, or you might hear about something easier, because you only have 2 ears, but if you have a network, you got plenty. So like, if you're in a big metropolitan area and they have tech meetups or whatever industry you're trying to get into, go to those things. I'm not in, I have become more of an outwardly like spoken person because of teaching, but I'm not inherently super like I'm going to go out and be around a bunch of people and try to network. But it is crucially important. And I have, that's how I ended up at Syndigo, was because of actually one of our students had worked there, and it's it's so important. And we tell our students in our class, like, every square that you see on this Zoom call they're going to be important to your career. They may not land you your first gig, but they can definitely help you land a second gig. And it's so worth the time and commitment, because once you get there, you are the one who put in all the work. I had a student reach out the other day and
Yeah.
like thank me. I was like, man, I'm not the one who did all the work. You did, man. Like,
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
you came in here and did all the work. Like, you don't have to thank me. Give yourself that big pat on the back.
Yeah.
Because what you put in, the energy that you put in, you're going to get back eventually. It may not be right away. You just keep going and don't give up. The sky's the limit if you allow it. And
Yeah,
it's
definitely.
really true. And I go on this soapbox a lot at NSS, and any of the students that I've had can probably say that I'm really passionate about everybody that tries to do this, because it's hard. And if you start, and things happen in life, and if you have to take a pause, just don't give up. Though things
Yeah,
happen,
definitely.
there's things that come up in life, and something, it may have to take a back seat, but it doesn't have to stay there.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
don't lose that sight.
Yeah, one thing that it's interesting, and my wife and I were talking about this earlier today. One thing that um really helped me in like every career shift, because like I went from college dropout. I was I went to three different schools in two different countries after I graduated from high school, and dropped out of every single one of them. And then I was like, man, I didn't really have a plan, but my sister, my oldest sister, the one who lived in Marquette, she's like, yeah, what about the recruiter? Let's talk about that. And so, like, I had somebody, pulling for me. She believed in me. She's like, you can do it. I think you can do it. And it's like, I knew that it was gonna be tough to do. And then later on, I met my wife somewhere in my career, and I always had somebody that backed me. And so, like, if you have somebody, it doesn't have to be like a family member or a romantic interest, who is now my family member because she's my wife. It doesn't have to be that person. It could be a mentor. It could be a friend who believes in you.
Mhm.
Man, you can take whatever you have and go so much further than it's like, oh, I'm all alone. I feel so all alone. But if you network and you're
Mhm.
around people who have done that, have done the change in some way, some form, it makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, I
So
couldn't agree with something more than that. That is
yeah,
a incredible, like, a wonderful point, and it's incredibly true. Like, having, yeah, you can do everything by yourself, but if you have somebody cheering in your corner, it
oh
does
yeah.
make it a little easier.
Oh yeah, definitely. I missed something earlier on. Like, we talked about it, and then like as you were like giving your piece of advice, you talked about it again. I want to know how you got to teaching at NSS.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Actually, I so straight out of my cohort, the instructor at the time, while I was going through the cohort, asked if I wanted to be a TA. And I was like, at the time I didn't have a for sure gig or anything, and I was like, I just want to stay in it. I don't want to get complacent after here and like
Oh yeah.
take a break or anything like that, because
Mhm.
breaks tend to not be necessarily a great thing. So I was like, I just want to stay in the world. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. I would love to be a TA. So I did that, and then I have just been doing it ever since. I was a TA, and then I was a junior instructor, and then Amanda, the lead instructor before me, she had been doing it for a while, and she was like, hey, I'm gonna be stepping down. And like I said, I'm not necessarily somebody who is inherently, I never thought of myself as a teacher. My wife always said that I'd be a good teacher, but I never quite believed in that. It's the somebody believing in you thing, right?
Yeah.
um and she was like, absolutely, you should do that. And I had her in my corner. I was like, all right, yeah, I'll give it a shot, and I absolutely adore it. It's
Nice.
It's been a long journey. I've been at, and if you include my time in the program, I've been doing it for 3 years.
Nice.
Uh,
Yeah, and you know what
Sleep.
they say? What they say, like if you find something you love to do and you get paid for it, you'll never work another day of your life,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So that's awesome that you were able to find your passion
mhm,
in that, doing something you love to do, and then also being able to pour into people who are trying to make that,
mhm.
trying to make a career change. Because it's really tough. I mean, sometimes we come on here and talk about it, and then looking back on it, it's like, oh yeah, maybe it wasn't that bad. No, it was bad. There was times that I was like really doubting, did I do the right thing?
Oh,
Should I have
absolutely.
done this or should I have done that? Should I go get a job at McDonald's, because at least I'll get paid, right? Versus like, I'm chasing my dream, it's
Yeah,
like, it's just sometimes, when you like really feel like nothing's happening, you really start to feel down. So it's
yeah,
uh it's important to have that good support group around you.
yeah. It is, and anybody out there that's listening, like Tito, you were talking about, kind of, where all the different shifts that you've had, and I alluded and talked about a couple, but like I started out, my grandfather started a sanitation business. My dad took it over. I was pumping portable toilets. I pumped portable toilets for 10 years. Uh, and then I ended up in the music industry, and then I tested fire alarm systems, and now I'm in data, amongst other jobs. I was a cashier at Walmart at one point. I worked for a caption telephone service at one point. Like, eventually, if you find the thing that you're passionate about, which I found in 8th grade, and this is what I like about my story, and kind of the poetic thing about this whole journey, is like I knew I liked it in 8th grade. I just had, I had a fling with the guitar, you know, and uh,
Yeah.
but in 8th grade. I knew I liked it. It was a lot of fun, and 20 some years later, however long it was, I got myself back there, and it's so achievable. And anybody that's hesitant about being corporate or whatnot, trust me, when I was pumping portable toilets, did I ever think I'd be in a corporate job,
So
and
real quick, like what
and I loved that job, and it like, that is not me like talking down on that. I adored that job.
yeah.
My dad provided for, me and my two brothers. They just, my dad just, and his brother kept expanding the business so that we had jobs. And it was, having, I know I was blessed with having a really good role model, and I know not everybody has that.
Oh
I
yeah.
just I was particularly blessed with somebody who was the epitome of, just work hard. And he always told me, he was like, Rob, you just have to find and get good at one thing. He was like, get really
Mhm.
good at one thing, and I promise you it will take care of you. And he was right. And and I meant to say this at the jump, Tito, but like, appreciate the service for the country. My father's a Vietnam War vet, so that's very close to my heart. So find those people that motivate you, and find those people that have your back in this. If like Tito said, when you have people cheering for you, it makes it easier. You can do it if you don't have it, but it's nice to have. And
Yeah.
draw on those people. My dad was one of them. My mom was one of them. I had a good situation growing up. I was blessed with that. But find those things that really can get you over the hump. And the sky really is truly the limit, if you allow it to be.
Oh yeah.
It's an incredible journey. I've had a long winding run, and
Yeah.
it's been great. There's been tears, there's been laughing, there's been all of it, but it's all worth it.
So I got a question. What other instruments do you play? You play electric, I'm assuming. I don't know. I'm just assuming you play electric.
I'm play mostly acoustic guitar right now, but yeah,
Really?
I play electric guitar. I just really like I started out electric guitar, and
Yeah.
it's kind of funny. I accidentally bought a classical guitar,
Oh,
and I was gonna return it for just a regular acoustic. And my buddy, this is when I was still working at the audio company, he was like, "No, hang on to that." He was like, "Don't." He's like, "You're gonna love the nylon strings, I promise you." He's like, "Yeah, the neck's gonna be a little weird to get used to at first," but he was
it's
like,
like playing a
"You're
waffle.
yeah, yeah, dude." And he was like, "Keep that," and he was right. It's just so I like playing really pretty music. I love playing funk and
Oh,
blues,
nice.
but like if
Okay.
I
Yeah.
sit down and play, I do really like playing nice, beautiful music. Especially now I have
Yeah.
a little daughter to play to, and yeah,
Yeah. That's a classical guitar. But
uh-huh.
yeah, I play acoustic and cello and a little bit of piano and I sing. So
Yeah, I play a little bit of piano. I can't sing for the life of me, but my wife was a classically trained like opera singer.
oh wow.
Yeah, so
She
I'm not
needs to
even
be
that
on the
great.
show. You
Yeah,
know, that's actually a really good segue. So I want to like thank you for I mean we could continue talking like in the studio, but we're really we're coming up on an hour.
yeah.
But I want to thank you for coming on here and sharing your story and like motivational speaking, you
Sorry.
know, for people because there are people out there like who maybe there's somebody out there who's like, oh, I'm just not feeling it. I don't know if I can do this. You can do it. I promise you can do it.
Yeah, I promise you
You know.
can.
So but next week our guest is going to be Alice Silva. She's an Army veteran and she was also a classically trained violinist. So that's going to be fun.
Super
I
cool.
love, yeah, I love talking to other veterans. I also love talking to musicians. And it seems like because I started my data career in Nashville, the majority of my, and then I'm involved with the NSS, the majority of my network happens to be in Nashville. And so it's like almost, almost all the time I'm talking to somebody who played something
Yeah.
or sang something or whatever. But yeah, don't go anywhere, Rob. But yeah, I'm gonna end the stream. But yeah, so everybody, hope to see you again next week, 6 p.m. Central on Monday. Peace.
See you guys.